Maybe we should take a few minutes to kind of clear up the bad blood between you, the idol smasher, and Asher
Hey,
Meza.
pick on my rabbi. I'm gonna
I'll tell
I'm
you.
gonna beat my chest, and I'm gonna flail around a little bit.
No,
Rabbi, I'm going to chomp at you.
I bet
Alan knows me
that you
too
and
on that one.
I bet that you and I agree more than we disagree.
I know we do. I've been
And
subscribed to your channel for years, dude. I've listened to you for a long time. Yeah, we do.
I run this like a business, and I'm not trying to make money in any way, but I try to be effective in my messages, and sometimes I come off a little abrasive, just because it gets the message out, not because I'm trying to really bash anyone here. I mean, as you know, I'm just a character that many people like to hate. Funny, I just saw an article that they sent me that Rabbi Chlorophene put out yesterday. He blatantly said it. Basically said that it's wrong to convert to Judaism. Did you see this article?
Yes, I did.
Were you shocked in any way?
I posted a very, very strong attack against that blog. I put the blog up, and I said my opinion of it. He really laid his cards out on that, especially where he speaks of 9 of 10 rabbis would say this. He's saying something else. And his attack against the construct of Talmudic Judaism. I don't understand the attacks that people have against the Talmud.
I don't think he attacked the Talmud.
I just don't understand it.
You know what? He's actually being very consistent. It doesn't help my argument much here, but he actually has been pushing the Noahide movement for many years. I mean, if people know Rabbi Chlorophene from the Path of the Righteous Gentile, he has laid the foundation for the Noahide movement that exists today. Now, if anyone takes the Noahide movement seriously, they would have to conclude with what he said. Now, people who know my work know that I don't take the Noahide movement seriously. In other words, I don't even think that the average rabbi actually takes the Noahide movement as serious as Rabbi Chlorophene does. But if they did, they would have to conclude that, you know what, you can't offer a people a standard and in any way expect them to either stay down or feel like they're second-class citizens in any way, right? I mean, it's in people's nature to overcome in some way. Nowadays, we have the deaf community actually coming out saying that they're actually proud to be deaf and they don't want to be able to hear. They've created a crutch where it didn't exist before. And I've always said that if anyone's ultimately going to take the Noahide and now the Ger movement seriously, they would actually have to tolerate a religion that's not going to, or a movement that's not going to sit around for scraps, but a movement that's going to want either be on the same level of Judaism or superior to it. It seems that a lot more time passed in Torah from Exodus 20 to Genesis 1 than afterwards. You have people walking around saying that Adam was a ger, that Avram Avinu was a ger, that Shem, you automatically have a bigger army than people in some way proclaiming.
He argues that King David is a ger.
Now, I'll tell you what, with the average rabbi that has pushed in any way the Noahide movement never really took it seriously. He thought, you know what, this is never going to take off. And the only reason we push it is to keep Gentiles away from Judaism, right? Or give them some sort of alternative. But you know what? It's growing. It's growing. And that's what makes me nervous because I think that this is how Christianity took off. Christianity, or at least Pauline Christianity, really arose as some sort of Ger Noahide movement after the death of Jesus. And
I never saw that. That's a new thing on me that I haven't been able to wrap my head around. I never really thought of it that way.
It eventually grew so big that it ended up persecuting Jews. I used to have a channel online called eYeshiva. And on there, I'd have an individual, his name was Roger Grattan.
I don't know the name.
Whatever happened to that guy?
Right, so he actually had smicha from the Sanhedrin to be a Noahide judge, or to be, I mean, he was up there in the Noahide movement. He came out, I remember when I was living in Israel, he made a video. It came out in Israeli news because he offered a Noahide sacrifice, which is pretty much like a barbecue, right? But in the land of Israel, saying that, hey, we're here, we're back, and we're offering sacrifices, and we're claiming our place in history. But he actually was of the opinion that not just was the Noahide movement an alternative to Judaism, it was ultimately superior to Judaism.
I went out to dinner with him. Gosh, I guess it was about 10 years ago. He came down to Florida when I was living in. I can't remember if I was in. I think it was in Fort Myers at the time, and we went out to eat, and we had a really long, about 4 or 5 hour conversation. And he was talking about that, about his big plan to offer sacrifices. And my whole point was, why?
I don't understand I never understood in Kalinda, you know, the story of Kalinda, where Adam offered sacrifices for 8 days, thinking the world was coming to an end. Mm-hmm. I never got a straight answer from anybody. The closest thing I got to a straight answer was when they said, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Pray."
Yeah, but it was a medrash, right? God. I mean, it's not in the Torah that, I mean, he thought the world was coming to an end. But my whole basis, telling people
the story.
But Midrashim in the Talmud are known as Agadata. Midrashim outside of the Talmud are known as Midrashim. Yeah. But my whole basis of saying that, you know what, if someone wants to keep Torah, I mean, if someone has been identifying with Israel for so long that they should just convert, is on the basis that everything that Noahides accept as true fall under the rubric of what's known as folklore and legend in Judaism. In other words, it's not scripture. Now, I'm not saying it's completely disposable. I'm saying that it's not necessarily true.
It's a science of thoughts, what it is. It's a whole different, it's not halacha. It's not.
It's like parables. It's to describe things that are beyond the story.
It's just a parable. Like, where were you praying about it? I mean, why are you trying to, like, brainstorm this idea if you know that it's just a story?
Because it's good for the brain. I think people like me, I've always had a mystical sense. That's what attracted me to Judaism in the first place, when I was way out there, far out, man. But it centered me. And I think that there is a special breed of people who kind of need that mental gymnastics to do better. And it's just nice that it's there. That's what brought me to it. But my interests aren't Kabbalistic. You know, my interests are the raw, what is practical, what is now. You know,
Jews nowadays wouldn't even eat a hot dog if it's not from, like, the highest hashkacha, highest authority. They leave nothing to chance, right? I mean, everything is what if. Do you think a Jew would build his whole eternity on parables, legends, folklore, or on something a little more trustworthy? In other words, Jews are paranoid on the smallest things. I mean, they have to be as secure as religion can be. So the average Jew, if they found out that their mother wasn't Jewish or their grandmother wasn't Jewish, I think they would convert to Judaism, because they'd be able to know, like, hey, these tales and legends are nice. They don't compare to actually what appears in Torah. The reason it's hard for my movement to defeat the Ger movement is because the Ger movement is not made up. A Ger Toshav does appear in Torah. It's not like defeating Mormonism. I mean, it's not like defeating Islam. See, the question that arises is that, do we know enough about this movement, about these individuals, to build anything off of when we have Judaism already? That's my question. For someone to devote so much of their life to a movement that is built off of Adam receiving a scroll,
it's not really
from an angel.
I never took it as the basis when I read the book. I took it as this is a parable telling you whatever it was. Adam received a Torah. Noah received the Torah. Obviously, Shem, you know, there was something passed down. Okay, I get it's a legend, and I get that it's a legend. You know, I got that. I don't think anybody would base their eternity on that. I would hope nobody would base their eternity on that.
Clearly describes these things as something that happened.
Yeah, that's what's said, and he cites his sources, and it's all there. It's not like it's a foreign thing.
But his sources are really kind of, you know, they're on the fringe of the midrash.
That's okay. The thing I'm going to get back to Chlorphine's.
Even if it was according to the midrash, it's still a midrash.
Let me get to real quick, because I've been wanting to get to that. I think what Chlorphine is saying needs to be said. It is interesting to me that before Rome really pulled what they pulled, there was a time when Jews would actually proselytize. They would go out and teach people to behave for God's sake. You know, there's an opportunity for the Jews to do that now. There's been a thing about conversion. There's been a thing about conversion as a religious thing. And what I think people are craving in the world who aren't Jewish, who aren't born into it, are craving something that's already there for them. The Creator is already there, but they're not looking to. I mean, and when they're told they have to fully convert to Judaism, get circumcised or poked, they would be joining a community. The only reason they convert, in my opinion, is because you're getting married. And I can see when you say be Jewish, it's like just go for it. At least there's somebody in Torah who is able to live in the land with the Jewish people, make money, have children, be prosperous, and be respected in the community, maybe even at one point even sit at a Passover sacrifice or offer, the Passover Seder, a real one. That there are a people in Torah that don't have to marry into being the bride of God, because being the bride of God is very special, and it's not supposed to be for everybody. Who are the Jews teaching themselves? It's not an echo chamber. Torah is supposed to go out into the universe. It's supposed to, encompass the earth like water. Not all people can become Jewish, but there are people out there who I've had to learn to live in my little 7 box now for the past 7 years. And I'm learning that. That's fine. Okay, I'll deal with that now. It's my karma, my mazel, whatever. But there were people at times when I first discovered Judaism, I was a yarmulke wearing fool. I told all my friends about it. I wanted to be Jewish. There was nothing more than I wanted to be Jewish. That's what I wanted. And yet there was something lacking. It's like this. It's like the way that the Jews were seeing the Jews I knew that saw conversion the way that I wanted was something completely different. I think what Rabbi Katz is getting in on is not halacha, but there is a spirituality to being a human being who worships the God of Israel. There is something more to 7 laws. And I think that that's what Katz and Chlorfine get into. And Chlorfine's blog is saying, don't convert, because what most people want isn't to marry a Jewess. They don't want to marry into Israel. They don't want to be Jewish. They want something more, but I don't think that that's necessarily what they want.
Wouldn't you acknowledge that spirituality, with that level that you're saying that's out there, is solely built off of Midrashim? In other words, if you know that Torah itself, although it mentions of someone eating a nevela, mentions the resident alien in many different aspects. We know that God never speaks to a resident alien. Moses never commands anything to them. There is no covenant made with the resident alien. It seems that resident alien is just synonymous with Gentile in Torah. Now, for someone to walk around and say that it's automatically the 4th holy house of Israel, only because
that just means they get married. That's a marriage law bit. The 4th house is about a marriage law. It's how they can marry.
Well, he's using the concept of the marriage to explain the 4th house.
Right.
Right, but the 4th house is not about marriage. The 4th house is his idea of the ger, and he's using the marriage law to explain how he understands the 4th house to be.
If you're going into the land of Israel and you're giving a law to these people, and in your last speech you say 1 law for you and those who sojourn with you, that's not going to mean Gentile. Because you're not going to let some Molech worship, Peo worship, you're not going to have people placing incense and bowing down to dead dude on a stick. That would not be prohibited. So it doesn't mean Gentile. It's a specific, what kind of non-Jewish person could live and have rights in the land of Israel above that of the common man.
The vast majority of commentators there teach that when it says 1 law for the ger and for the native born, every commentator says that means convert. I know that ger means different things in Torah. The only thing we could agree on is that an outsider could take upon himself all of Torah to the extent that they're equivalent to a born Israelite to all regards. In other words, that someone could convert. It says, do not hate the Edomite, for he's your brother. Right? I mean, people who are coming in, there's a notion of coming in. All we know that in Torah, God only gives 1 standard. Now, I personally believe that righteous Gentiles do exist. But I don't think the Bible speaks to that.
Right.
Well, we find in the Tanakh
Right, but not in
we find
Torah.
the Gibeonites.
Okay.
Okay, but the application of Torah as it comes out in the Tanakh and in the prophets, we find the Gibeonites, we find the Eved of Solomon, and these people they go through sojourning with Israel, both of those groups, and we even see them coming back from the exile. Both of the the Gibeonites and the Eved of Solomon, we see them coming back from the Babylonian exile. So they really stuck it out, and they were a distinct group. So we need to learn more about these groups and what they are.
So, in one area, in regards of any spirituality or anything spiritual, you guys rely on the rabbis 100%. And in this area, when virtually all the rabbis speak that the Gibeonites were converts who were forced to carry water, you don't. As you know, in the Talmud, and with the exception of that portion of Avodah Zarah 64, there's really nothing else written about the ger. I'm using the word ger loosely. The notion of the ger toshav. It gives three things.
Ger toshav doesn't really exist in the Torah itself.
No, only Abraham called himself a ger and a toshav.
I mean, the notion of toshav is a ger that resides. I mean, it's a ger or gar, right? Which is a ger who dwells.
The sources don't really bother me as much because, I mean, before he wrote his book, I had my rabbi, who's a religious court judge, Rabbi Dov Neal. He said, it was in class, you're ger toshav. I'm assuming it was a parsha that had something to do with it, but he stopped and he says, look, I'm just going to say something right now. You're ger toshav. You've chosen us. You've chosen our God. You come to our teachers. You come to our sages. You read about our prophets. You can't go back now. You're one of us. And when the time comes, you'll have a tzitzi. You'll be with us on the way home. And great. I never really needed more than that. That's kind of how I see it. And I've
never heard a rabbi speak about that. I mean, if you could show me, even in Nativ, when they bring the rabbis to speak, it seems like when those rabbis think of ger, and I'm including Tovia Singer here, but they're just automatically thinking noide. Right?
Pretty much.
They're not taking it to the depths that Katz and Chlorophene take it. Right? And I've never seen another rabbi or the other rabbis apart from Chlorophene and Katz push that idea, which is why you telling me that you have a rabbi who in some way endorses what Chlorophene does is a shock to me. It
was like 7
I'm not aware of any rabbi that endorses what Rabbi Chlorophene's doing.
This was long before there was long before, I think, this was years ago. But Bob was in the same. I don't know if you were there that night, but Bob, that's where I met Bob, was in Rabbi Dove's class, and he said it. And
yeah, but you know Scripture, and with what you know in Scripture,
right?
Just by Scripture alone, but does it sound like there's more than one standard?
On Scripture alone, no, but by qualifying that, I'm not sure if anybody's got that standard all the way right. I know there is a universal morality.
I mean, I believe that as well.
I don't know if rabbinical Judaism, I think the time of the rabbis is gone. I think like the time of the prophets went, the time of the rabbis is gone. Whatever's coming now is bigger than we're thinking. Nobody knows what's coming. I think what's coming is going to be better than what we have now. But as far, I think there's one standard, but I don't. Yeah, there are different standards. You don't hold a Kohen Gadol to the same standard as you would Johnny Yaakov.
Right, but it's still the Torah standard. I mean, it's mentioned within the 630.
There's a Torah, right. There is a Torah standard, absolutely.
Right. So then you would have to acknowledge that everything that you've built with your life on till now is built off of folklore and legend.
Oh, not everything, no.
It's built. I don't know if I would consider the Rambam, if I would consider the Mishnah Berurah, if I would consider the Kinuk to be. The Rambam's
1,000 years ago. With the Mishnah Berurah is 100 years ago. But these aren't even midrashim from.
But they discuss the Noahide within this. They discuss the ger within this.
No, I believe in the Noahide laws, but I believe that the Noahide laws were created by the Sanhedrin to be able to judge Gentiles living in the land of Israel.
Yeah.
Although.
Okay, that's possible.
Right.
Yeah, makes sense.
I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, but like anything, halachic, give it enough time, and someone builds mysticism upon that. So then the Rambam teaches that Adam was given 6 laws, and then Noach was given the 7th law. But this is automatically
one way to understand it.
as students of Jewish law, we know if anything exists in Jewish law that has nothing to do with law, that falls under the realm of Agadah and Midrash. It might be true, or it might not be true. I mean, for sure, it's not in the Torah. So, I mean, it's not absolutely true. For sure, not true enough for a Jew.
I mean, a lot of it's in the Brisa.
If something's in the Brisa,
is Midrash. I mean, no, I'm sorry, Brisa is
no,
law.
Be in the Brisa,
that's
be
Mishnah.
The there are no
Brisa is Mishnah that was. I mean,
Mishnaic literature. Yes, I agree. But
what? Yeah.
Mishnaic literature.
Yes.
Right, but it's still folklore within that Mishnaic literature. For example, the reason the Rambam codified his set of laws is because he was trying to make a distinction. He was trying to separate folklore from law.
Yeah.
Because the Talmud, if you read the Talmud straight through, I mean, there's so many stories in there.
Yeah. I can't separate.
You to take the law. You're like the meat from the bones, let's say. Right?
Yeah.
This is why we have the Shulchan Aruch. This is why I have the Mishnah Berurah. This is why, because he was in some way trying to muzzle the sages in terms of their tales and legends. Right? Tales and legends, I'm not saying are bad. I'm just saying they're not enough to build a doctrine upon, or for sure not enough to build a religion off or a movement off. That's all I'm saying. I believe in the 7 laws of Noah.
Sure.
Okay. However, I believe that if someone wants to join something, anything, they should try to reach the most secure degree they can acquire. Right? If my kid wanted to go to college and he asked me, like, should I get an online degree or should I get an actual degree from an accredited university? I mean, I tell him, try to get the accredited degree.
Right.
And that is what Judaism is. In other words, it's the closest, the most secure thing that we can have in a religious world. That Jews who keep Torah have a share in the world to come. Share in the world to come. Share in the world to come.